Claire Brown Peterson is the person who's going to respond from the natural law response point of view. And uh, I'll wait to give my clarifications, but I think she provides some interesting context to the differences and also maybe some of the similarities. And I think that we've also seen in kind of our last book that we did when we looked at different point of views for apologetic methods. All right, so she says here, while virtue ethics and natural law ethics are not equivalent views of morality, certain versions of these theories do fit together, and quite naturally so. One indication of this potential fit is in the fact that Christian proponents of both theories can point to the same philosopher, and that's our boy Thomas Aquinas, as their most important historical defender. And so we saw that last time. And of course, anytime anyone mentions natural law, that should automatically spark your ears to think Aquinas. And so Claire Peterson says, I would go so far as to classify the natural ethics that I defend at the heart of Brad Kallenberg's preferred virtue ethics as complementary rather than competing views. So maybe that's an issue for you, or maybe that could be a strength of when you're considering this point of view.
Yeah, yeah. And she goes on and says, she says that virtue ethics places a great deal of emphasis on the importance of character, which we already know, and through habit becomes a part of oneself, so that changing one's moral orientation is not a simple matter of resolving to behave in a particular way in the future. As a natural law ethicist, she tells us that she can agree with all of this, right? So it's more than just I'm deciding to change my behavior. It's creating a habit so that my character is affected. That's the idea here. Mm-hmm. And so she says, if I'm to live as a human that is designed to live, right, I must remember this fact as I consider my own moral development. In other words, natural law ethics, as she sees it, will affirm that humans on particular occasions to cultivate out the virtue. So she becomes close to, agreeing with the virtue ethicist, Kallenberg, right? And in fact, she says, she could be considered one.
Right. So again, maybe a strength towards her point of view, or maybe this is a negative. And so she's going to get into kind of why she still will hold the view that she does against
how she's different. Yeah.
Right. So again, very magnanimous of her, and good spirited. So again, one of the benefits of looking at kind of a debate like this is you're reading just the written word, and so yes, there's some critiques that you can do of how people present, because sometimes how people write is not always how people speak. But also, at the same time, you're hoping to get the best version of these argumentations because they do have the time. They're not bound by the audience or trying to make the kitschy point. They're expressing the view that we think best communicates the ideas, and so that's another good reason to kind of view debates as like this. All right, so she then says, I can imagine a reader of this book asking me, well then, why do you call yourself a natural law ethicist rather than a virtue ethicist? Very, very clear point here. My answer is that I do consider myself, she says, a virtue ethicist as well as a natural law ethicist, but that I do not consider virtue ethics a standalone ethical theory. So this is an interesting point where she says these two aren't kind of congruent from each other, but that they kind of fall in line. And so how well do they fall in line? Are they parallel? Can you run on either track, or is one the basis of the other? And so she's going to give the context of it. So virtue ethics requires a context, she says, and that context is best provided by the natural law. So she's saying kind of that there's these two run similar to each other, but that she's saying that the natural law provides kind of the basis or the foundation for where the virtue ethics can adhere itself to. So she goes on to say that no full-fledged theory of ethics is complete if it is merely emphasizes the importance of developing and consistently acting out of good character traits. And I think this is kind of a fair point for her to make and to go down. And it would be interesting to see maybe what a response to this would be.
Right. And so she wants to spell out now what a full-fledged ethical theory would look like. She
Mm-hmm.
says that a full-fledged ethical theory that emphasizes the virtues also needs an explanation of two things. Trait, a virtue, as opposed to a vice or, a morally neutral trait. And secondly, how to flesh out specific virtues. She says the theory should thus give us some indication of how to delineate generosity from, extravagance, for instance.
Right.
So she wants to, that this is the idea of context that she's talking about, right? What is it that makes a particular trait a virtue? And then how do you flesh that out so that you can make some distinctions with regard to various types of traits or characteristics?
Mm-hmm. Right. Very, very good questions to ask the virtue ethicist here.